Thanks for joining us. My name is Julia. I'm the volunteer coordinator at the Coffee Oasis. I've been here for about 9 years as a case manager, as a manager over case management, as a training specialist for staff and for youth to learn about trauma-informed care, and now as the volunteer coordinator.
I'm Patrick Still. I'm Senior Director of Youth Programs for the Coffee Oasis. This stint of employment, I've been here for 13 years, mainly in job training and case management. And since 2015, I've been some form of director around youth programs.
This training is going to take anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours. We'll take a break halfway through. We're going to start with just explaining who the Coffee Oasis is, our mission, our vision, our history, core values. Then we'll spend some time talking about the actual youth programs that we have at Coffee Oasis and the way that you can actually volunteer in each of those programs. I'll go over the volunteer process again briefly. We'll take a break, and then we're going to talk about kind of like youth culture very briefly. We'll spend some time talking about trauma-informed care and sexual exploitation. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. So, Pat's going to start us off with our mission and history of Coffee Oasis.
The Coffee Oasis mission is restoring communities through compassionate and youth programs and successful coffee businesses. This mission, we are an organization that is a faith-based nonprofit. We believe in giving pathways of opportunity to youth in our community, and we understand that these youth are our future in this community. That, however, those youth are often hindered by hurts and homelessness, and they can't reach their full potential. The Coffee Oasis interacts with the youth of our community through several programs that will be presented today, like Oasis Centers, like case management, like housing programs. We also operate as businesses. These businesses give a great third place where both community and youth can have a neutral place to meet and connect. They also operate as places for job training to give youth, again, yet another potential area of growth. Today, we're going to go over those different programs and talk a little bit about our history, talk a little bit about some of our best practices in youth programs. Our history. Dave and Cindy Frederick, our original founder, started this type of ministry through kind of two avenues. Dave, the founder, was a pastor in the community, and he left a church to start a small home church. Wanting to provide for his family, he started working as a chaplain with the Bremerton Police Department. He also, him and his family, started doing foster care. And through those two avenues, they saw an audience of hurting and homeless youth in the community that they didn't know that were here, and sought to look for a place to interact with them. Dave and Cindy, never being business owners before, found a business, the Coffee Oasis, that was going out of business at the time, never having partaked of drinking coffee before. They stepped out in faith and bought a coffee business as a place to interact with youth. The ministry here, or the programs here, first started with two expressions, late night on Friday night and some street outreach. The first late night was attended by 4 youth that street outreach workers met at Smoker's Corner, which is a place where kids came and smoked 25 feet off of Bremerton High School's property.
Which is really entertaining to think of Dave going up to a bunch of kids and being like, come here.
We opened our doors in 97 as Hope in Christ Ministries. Over the years, we have changed our name to Coffee Oasis because that is the name we were known in the community because of our coffee shops. What had started with a one late night has grown to a continuum of services that include right now 5 locations that have drop-in centers, case management, job training, 2 housing programs as an organization in many successful businesses. And as we go through this, we'll highlight some of those programs so you become a little more acquainted with us. To get us started, I also just want to touch on our core values. Every organization has some principles that guide their ship. The Coffee Oasis has some principles that guide who we are too. First of all, first principle or core value is truth. The principle is Jesus is our model. Our practice is we follow Jesus in every decision we make. The second is compassion. We love because Jesus has loved us. We seek to bring the hope of Jesus to the pain on the streets. Community. We are very much a community-focused organization. We have a lot of partners. Our name is well known in the community. We don't want to be an entity in the community. We want to be an entity that knows and is related by our community. And our principle is be a family and love the city that we're in. Our practice is we care for one another because we were cared for. Excellence. Principles show the incomparable greatness of Jesus in everything we do. Practice to make superior coffee, to provide best care for youth, and see people celebrate Jesus. Our last core value is replication. Principle, teach, show others what we value. Our practice to help others faithfully live these values.
Any questions on that? So just to clarify, so the age range that we work with is 13 to 25, and we have locations in Paulsbo, Bremerton, Port Orchard, and then in Tacoma as well.
Hi there. For this section, I am going to talk about what the volunteer opportunities are for Pierce County. They are a little different than Kitsap County, so there's a separate video that is made for this purpose. Let me start off by talking about the different ways you can volunteer in youth programs. We also have capacities to volunteer in community development as well as in behind the scenes kind of miscellaneous volunteer roles. So for youth programs, we have 4 youth programs. The first one is called Youth Engagement, and it is within this umbrella that we work on identifying, connecting, and engaging youth into the services that we have at Coffee Oasis. We do this through effective school outreach and street outreach and our drop-in centers. So I'll break down the 2 roles that exist under youth engagement where you can volunteer in. So the first one is street outreach. So street outreach volunteers go with a street outreach worker into the public schools, to skate parks, to regular parks, just on the street, really to find youth that fit our demographic and to invite them into our programs, to give them resources that they might need and really try to meet their needs right then and there to a degree that will then bring them into the rest of the services we have available that can help meet their needs even further. We do this by developing relationships with them, meeting their needs in the moment, and then again, just inviting them to come to one of our drop-in centers or to our shelter if they need it. So requirements to volunteer in street outreach are if you're comfortable approaching youth and building new friendships, if you're able to pass a school background check, personality traits that are helpful for this role are if you enjoy meeting new people, if you enjoy walking and spending time outdoors, particularly for the street outreach portion, and if you are good at helping others set attainable goals, which would be for the school outreach portion. We have historically been invited into different schools in our counties to perhaps a study hall period that we're allowed to take over and use to talk about life skills and different other topics that are relevant to youth that struggle with homelessness or that are at risk for homelessness. These students that come are typically students that the school counselors and teachers have identified as high risk for homelessness or at-risk behavior. So it's a really cool way that we can meet youth in the school setting. So for street outreach, the time commitment for this, we are looking for 4 hours a month. The hours when street outreach occurs is typically Monday through Friday from 12 to 4 p.m. The second program that falls under youth engagement is the drop-in centers. In Tacoma, we call it the Port. So in the center, center volunteers can really just build relationships with youth by playing games, engaging in conversation, and helping them think about their future. We'd like to think about the drop-in center just really as like a safe hangout place for the youth to spend time, to take a shower, do laundry, get snacks, use our Wi-Fi, and just have a place to hang out and be. As a volunteer, creating a homey space is kind of the ultimate goal, building relationships. And really, sometimes it looks like a youth comes in and plops down on the couch and asking them, "So how was school? How did that conversation with your best friend that you mentioned last week, how did that go?" So in the drop-in center, it's a relaxed environment where you can play games, build relationships, and all of that. So requirements for this role in the drop-in center, the Port. If you are comfortable approaching youth and building new friendships, if you have a good reputation as a role model to younger youth and adults, and if you're able to pass a background check. Personality traits, if you are comfortable in crowds. So if you are an introvert, this may not be your cup of tea. If you enjoy making people feel at home and like they're a part of a family. And if you enjoy facilitating group activities, and if you're able to work in a team setting. Being in the drop-in center typically involves lots of other volunteers and staff members, and so it's pretty important to have a clear system on how you all work together. Some people might be overseeing the clothing closet. Some people might be overseeing getting stuff for kids from the kitchen. Someone might be overseeing the pool table. So being able to work as part of a team is also very helpful. Two components to the drop-in center that might get your thoughts going would be life skill classes and celebration team. So life skill classes is really the idea of if you have a skill or a passion that you would like to teach or share, we would love to have that. Maybe you are really gifted in financial literacy. Maybe you have a history of being a mechanic. Maybe you have a background in the mental health field. Maybe you enjoy cooking, the arts, whatever it is. Sharing a life skill class is really a 20-minute presentation in the drop-in centers where you just share what you know. We've had individuals come in and give a 20-minute presentation on here's how to budget well. Here's how to cook an easy meal. Here's how to change the oil in a car. So if you have a skill or a passion that you think would be relevant, that would be a way to share it. The second thing I mentioned was celebration team. So the celebration team is a group of volunteers that really want to help support the Coffee Oasis staff as we celebrate holidays, youth birthdays, graduations, and other accomplishments that our youth make. This team communicates mostly by email and has occasional in-person meetings, but this would be a lovely way if you want to be involved, but maybe can't commit to a weekly or every other week of coming into the center. So we've covered street outreach, we've covered the drop-in center, also known as the port. Now we're going to talk about the second youth program, which is youth development. So we've talked about youth engagement, street outreach and drop-in center fall underneath that. Now we're going to talk about youth development. So this is kind of the next step for youth a lot of the time. This is all about allowing and establishing youth-led goals through case management, mentoring, and job training that allow the youth and young adults to really thrive in life and become a little bit more self-sustaining. So mentoring, to be a mentor, is a really, really important role. Mentors and tutors, so think too, if you are good at a particular subject. We sometimes have youth that ask for help with math homework or that struggle with writing a paper. So mentors and tutors, they're a really positive influence in the lives of the youth that are enrolled in weekly case management. Mentors and tutors, they can be really good listeners, helping guide youth to make healthy life decisions. I like to explain mentorship really kind of like co-parenting. So most of the kids that have a mentor within Coffee Oasis, they have a case manager, and the case manager is looking at the picture in regards to, I need to get this youth a birth certificate, and we need to get them new shoes, and we need to write up a resume, and we need to do interview practice questions, and we need to get that social security card and get them signed up for food stamps. So they're thinking very methodically, practically. And sometimes what happens, as having been a case manager myself, a youth might come in to their case management setting and just be so full to the brim with the latest drama or gossip, or they had a fight with their mom, or their girlfriend broke up with them, or something like that. And so they'll come in needing to process, and they will, because the case manager sometimes is the only safe adult that they've seen that week. And so they come in and they process and vent. But then unfortunately, what that means is that case manager now only has about 20 minutes to do all those really practical things. So a mentor gets to kind of step in and provide that relational need for the youth by being a listener, not necessarily even giving advice, but just hearing the youth. So if you're interested in more one-on-one work, if you are organized, mature, if you're a good listener, if you're patient, if you're persistent, because our youth sometimes struggle with the concept of making an appointment and keeping that appointment. If you have good verbal and written communication skills, that's also helpful. This would be a great role for you. So requirements for this are if you are in a stable place in life and you can maintain healthy boundaries, completing a mentor training that you would be given by one of the staff members here after you've gone through the volunteer process, and that you must first volunteer in the drop-in center for 3 months before you can be a mentor. And I want to make sure I clarify as well, for the drop-in center, the time commitment we're looking for with the drop-in center is 4 hours a month. And the drop-in center, Monday through Friday, we typically have broken up the shifts to be anytime 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. and, or 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. So kind of in that kind of time range. And that can be made flexible to pay based on your availability as well. But so for mentoring, the time commitment would be around 1 to 2 hours a week for at least 6 months, because it takes time to build a relationship. Monday through Friday from 9 to 5, just typically when we are sure that we have staff that are available in case some conversations should arise that you need support in. So the next would be our housing. So we call our housing services here in Tacoma the loft. So, despite the growing number of youth that are experiencing homelessness in Washington, there's very, very few housing options for them. And it's very sad, but we're very, very grateful that we get to be a provision in that area. So housing volunteers get to help by providing a self-welcome home presence for the youth when they come back to the loft. This shelter is open 24 hours a day. Requirements for this role as a volunteer with our housing is if you can pass a Washington State Patrol background check and a DCYF background check and be over 21 years old. Given that our shelter is licensed, we have to make sure that all of the background check steps have been completed. There is a necessary completion of an additional 24 hours of training that we would provide for you to do. Personality traits for helping in the loft would be if you enjoy making youth feel at home, if you appreciate a more structured setting because it is a state licensed shelter, if you're good at listening and providing stability and just consistency. The number one thing here for youth is that they really just need a consistent presence of a staff member. Time commitment for volunteering in the loft is going to be a minimum of 6 hours a month, and the hours of this can be very flexible. You can do this in 2-hour increments, 3-hour increments, 4-hour increments, anywhere from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., from 8 p.m. to 12 a.m., from 12 a.m. to 4 a.m., whatever works for your schedule. So those are the youth program specific ways to volunteer. I want to spend some time now talking about other ways and other opportunities that might be of interest to you. So other opportunities might look like things such as facilities, groundskeeping, housekeeping, administrative work. So if you are someone who prefers kind of a behind the scenes way of being involved, especially if you have a really good skill set, if you have a history of being an electrician or a mechanic, or you're really good with IT stuff, all of those things are really, really helpful to us. If you love organizing, if you like answering phones, all of those skills can be really, really valued at our offices because they're all needs that we have. And typically it is staff members that are trying to manage all of those things. And so if you, as a volunteer, have a skill set that you would like to share with us, we would love that as well. There's also the option of volunteering at special events. So this kind of goes along with celebration team for the drop-in center, but special events would be, we have the holidays where we have big special events that come up where we need support with Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Halloween. Volunteering with our special events is a really beautiful way to help us out. For example, we have a way that we celebrate Halloween time with them, Thanksgiving, Christmas, back to school. And so we really need volunteers that are available sometimes just to help with special events. And that might mean setting up and tearing down, serving a meal, decorating, wrapping Christmas presents. So if you want to have your toes kind of in the water of helping out with youth programs, but you're not able to commit time-wise to a weekly or every other week or even once a month capacity, helping out in the special events world would also be incredibly helpful. Additionally, if you have a phone, we need help with having photographs taken. So you do not have to have a fancy camera in order to help us with photography and videography. So we have one individual who is our main staff member that does the photography and videography for all of our locations. And so it would be massively helpful if you are somebody that can take relatively good pictures, or at the very least, take good instruction on how to take pictures and how to take videos. And we like to use this for when we are trying to share with the community, hey, this is what we do. Or, hey, let's show the youth some of the pictures that we took from the Thanksgiving dinner that we had together. And so that's another way to help out in the special events arena, is to show up, and your job being to take pictures and to take videos and all of that. So requirements for these other opportunities I've discussed are, if you are specialized in a technical, mechanical, or practical skill set, if you thrive in a project-focused environment that's much more task-oriented rather than people-oriented, and personality traits, if you're more of a hands-on person, more behind the scenes. And then time commitment for this is really as needed and or as available. Another way within the kind of other opportunities behind the scenes world for volunteering would be by donating resources and groceries. So I'm going to list a few descriptors of what this sounds like. So we have a resident meal once a week. We host a family style dinner for the youth residents that are at our shelter. And so if you would please consider providing a meal to our housing, the loft, or offering a monetary donation to fund the meal, that's a really lovely way to participate as well. Due to licensing regulations, all the food has to come from a commercially prepared kitchen. Groceries. Please consider donating basic foods like milk, butter, eggs, bread, juice to the shelter. We also really appreciate snack foods, so single bags of chips or granola bars or power bars or fruit snacks. We make the youth lunches every day, and so the single snack sizes go really, really easily into lunch bags. As far as clothes, which we're asked a lot about, right now we don't actually have capacity to accept clothes or shoe donations, so please, by all means, find another local nonprofit or agency that can take those donations. We do have an Amazon list of needs that we need for the loft or for the port, and you are welcome to reach out to me for the specific link if you are curious about looking at that Amazon wish list and seeing if there's something on there you'd like to purchase for that. I'm going to talk about a couple or a few other community development or administrative roles that you can volunteer in. So the first community development role would be as a community advocate. So our community development team does a fabulous job of going to churches, going to civic clubs, talking to the community, and really sharing about who we are as an organization, sharing about the youth that we serve. And it's a combination of them encouraging people to help financially support us, but also with time. And so many of you who are maybe watching this, you heard about us through somebody coming to your church or coming to your club or coming to your community event and talking about the Coffee Oasis. And that's what spiked your interest to be here now. So community advocates are really advocates for homeless and at-risk youth, raising awareness about Coffee Oasis and our mission, our youth programs, the impact, and doing this with a community development worker alongside you. So this, practically speaking, looks like you would go with a community development worker to a church where maybe they're speaking, and being there at the maybe the table out in the lobby and answering questions that somebody might have, or people might come up to you afterwards and say, okay, so how do I get involved? And you get to be another point person, so that it's not just the one Coffee O staff member fielding all the questions. You get to be another voice to go, oh, you would go onto the website, or you would contact this person, or let me take your name and phone number. So that is a way, if you are somebody who can agree to follow the organization guidelines, there would be a community development training. We wouldn't just say, okay, here you go, throw you to the wolves. There would be a training specific to how to communicate and answer questions and what questions to even field. Personality traits for this role look like if you're personable, if you're social. So again, if you're a hardcore introvert, this may not be your forte, but You never know. First time for everything. If you're organized, if you're mature, if you're professional, and if you have good verbal and written communication skills. The time commitment as a community advocate is really as needed. So we would put your name on a list, and when our community development team is going to go out somewhere, you'd be contacted to see, hey, are you available on this day near in the future? We'd love to have the support by setting up or tearing down or overseeing a booth or writing down names and contact information and so forth. The last two ways to volunteer, one is as a facility volunteer, and the other is as an administrative office volunteer. So I'm just kind of going to go over a little bit more of the specifics. They fall under the other opportunities behind the scenes work, but I just want to explain a little bit more. So a facilities volunteer is really somebody, if you are good with repair and landscaping work, if you can assess exterior and interior repair needs, if you enjoy being more hands-on and working on projects, if you're a technician, anything in that world, we would love to have you volunteer with us. We have 3 locations in Kitsap County, and we have a location in Tacoma, and things are breaking on and off, just like any other house would have repairs that are needed. And so having people that are skilled in this area really helps us so that we don't have to hire somebody that would cost maybe more than what we can financially do at the moment. So volunteer hours for this would be, approximately 2 hours a week, depending on what's needed. Sometimes there's big projects that are going on. Maybe we need to repair a porch or replace windows, or there's some electrical issue, or we're trying to even get an idea of what a remodel would look like. So as a facilities volunteer, your skill set, you could just say, hey, this is what I am comfortable with. And we would certainly take that, but never put you in a position to fix something that you don't feel comfortable fixing. So this, again, this is a really great way to volunteer behind the scenes. The last one is as an administrative office assistant, or just office administrator. So if you enjoy connecting with people, assisting people in an open office setting, this would be lovely. This looks like welcoming guests and providing them with initial support. So we have people that randomly walk into our various buildings with questions, or questions about donations, questions about how to get involved, questions on where the closest cafe is, questions on how they can support the youth. And so you being kind of the initial face for that would be really helpful. We also need someone to help manage the phones and emails, maintain some office organization and cleanliness, and other tasks kind of as needed. We're looking for, 4 to 8 hours a week, whatever you can provide. We would like for it to be consistent. So if you say I could do 3 hours on a Tuesday afternoon, we go, great. If we can create some kind of rhythm, then it helps us know what remaining time during the week do the staff members need to cover all those things. So this is also, again, just another lovely way to volunteer in a way that's incredibly impactful to us, but maybe doesn't go directly into direct youth contact if that's not something you're wanting to do at this time. So that is all the youth program, community development, miscellaneous volunteer ways to support. The last thing I'll say is you yourself, or if you know of anyone, meal providing is really helpful. Dropping off a meal at the port, at our drop-in center, doesn't require background check, doesn't require you to go through the volunteer process. Everything else I've talked about does require you to apply online, do a background check, and watch or attend an orientation training. To drop off a meal does not require you to go through that process at all. And so maybe you are thinking ahead and going, oh, it'd be really great for my family, and I have young kids, or my church, or this club I'm a part of to be involved in some capacity. coming together and providing a meal, on, I don't know, the third Friday of every month, or we're going to provide lunch on Wednesday afternoons. Doing that together and then dropping it off doesn't require you to have to be involved. Now, if the desire is to stay at the port or at the loft and serve the meal or stick around, that's where you do have to go through the volunteer process. But if you're just wanting to literally drive by, drop off stuff, and then keep going, that's perfectly fine. So that is all what I have for you in regards to volunteer opportunities. Please ask any more questions that you might have via email. I'm going to allow you to get back to the rest of the training, where you will talk about the volunteer process, street culture, diversity, and trauma-informed care, as well as human trafficking and so forth.
We're going to now spend some time talking about street youth culture and different dynamics that you might experience when you are interacting with the youth.
The Coffee Oasis serves all youth ages 13 to 25. Each youth have their own unique stories and experiences. Some of the situations that you may experience while working with youth for the Coffee Oasis may be these things. Unstable housing. Many of our youth are experiencing homelessness or have run away, often leaving homes because people in their lives are unstable, abusive, or neglectful. Parents often are experiencing the same things that youth are. They are experiencing issues of mental health, unemployment, food insecurity, emotional stress, addiction, and more. Youth behaviors may not be the most welcoming. A lot of times they are experiencing stress or disappointment, and when being introduced to a new volunteer or staff, they will often act defensive at first. And they're seeking whether a volunteer or staff will stick it out, will stay around. They secretly want long-standing relationships, and they're seeing if that individual will stay. Youth on the streets have a different concept of time, priorities, and boundaries, or in some cases, a lack of. The other day, they live a day-by-day world or existence, and they see themselves in a different situation or different way than dominant society. A youth brain also has not fully developed by 25. This means that the prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed, where temperament, decision making, impulsive decision making may happen, and it's not fully in operation. This often explains why teens and young adults live a here and now reality with little thought for the future consequences. 37% of our youth that come into the drop-in center identify as homeless or have experienced stints of homelessness. The number leaps to 61% when it comes to a relationship and case management. So why so many are experiencing homelessness? This is our current data through our human management intake system. In our families, we see conflict in our families. Almost 51% of our youth come from single family homes where either a mother or father are not present. Parents have they're experiencing parental abuse or neglect within their family of origin. 43% of our youth experience physical, emotional abuse within their homes. Parental or youth mental health and substance abuse. 23% experience mental health issues, and 18% have experienced chemical dependency issues within their lives. These situations have led to them experiencing houselessness or homelessness that have brought them into a relationship with the Coffee Oasis.
Any questions? Okay. All right, we're going to spend some time talking about trauma-informed care. So it's a term that is becoming, thankfully, increasingly familiar, but we're just going to go over it anyway. So the Coffee Oasis is a trauma-informed organization. Trauma-informed care means treating the whole person, which includes looking at somebody's past and their coping skills and all of what makes them who they are. This usually looks like a lot of coping mechanisms for behaviors that usually are not well received by others, but those behaviors are serving a purpose for them. So what does it mean to be a trauma-informed organization and a trauma-informed volunteer? So I'm going to go through a list of 6 different things. So number 1 is create safety. So if a youth is upset or appears really out of control, only the staff members should be the ones interacting with that youth. Your role as a volunteer is to be much more focused on the other youth and keeping them safe. A lot of times our youth like to help each other when one of them is upset, and it sometimes just aggravates the situation. And so it's really well-intentioned, but so all that to say, as a volunteer, if you can just assist in creating safety for that space, only the staff member will be interacting with the youth that seems to be physically out of control. So number 1, creating safety. Number 2, regulating the nervous system. So we all respond to stress very, very differently. You might be familiar with the term fight, flight, freeze, faint, fawn. And so stress really affects the brain by pulling you out of a logical reasoning and just thrusting you into a state of survival and panic. So if you are somebody that experiences hyperarousal, where you get explosive and jittery and irritable, or somebody that goes into hypoarousal, where you are depressed or withdrawn or kind of zombie-like, both of those are a stress response. So it might look different, and it's going to look different for the youth as well. So when youth go into either one of those states, it's really important for volunteers and staff to stay calm, use the tools that we have, and support them to the best of our ability. Number 3 is building a connected relationship. This is the number 1 way to regulate somebody's nervous system when they're upset in any way. When we're around people that we care about, our bodies produce oxytocin. It's an attachment bonding chemical that really helps calm the nervous system down quite a bit. If we stay connected to the youth in dialogue and by having empathy, we're eventually going to be able to help them calm their nerves enough to then be open to talking about what happened. So the worst thing you can do as a staff member or as a volunteer is to try to meet their emotions with logic. It's just not going to work. If you want to try to calm them down, you have to meet their emotions with emotional empathy, and that will be what calms them down. And then they'll be at a place where they can actually begin to talk about, okay, well, here's what triggered me. And yeah, that probably wasn't the best decision. Or, okay, I'm hearing the feedback. Here's what I need to do differently. But that's not going to be doable when they're in the moment. So your job as a volunteer is just to stay emotionally connected. Usually means not a lot of talking, usually means a lot of listening and providing empathy. We don't want to enter their chaos. We want to share the calm that we have, not enter the chaos that they're experiencing. Number 4, supporting the development of a coherent narrative. So when I am a private practice therapist in addition to a volunteer coordinator, so I'll nerd out for a little bit in that your brain is split into your right and left hemisphere. Your right hemisphere is much more dominant in emotions that are pretty intense: anger, sadness, panic, fear, joy, despair, and your left hemisphere is much more dominant in logic, language, reasoning. Guess which hemisphere goes offline when you're in trauma? The one that would maybe be most helpful. So we've done brain scans that show that there is no activity in the left hemisphere when you're in the middle of trauma. So what that means is if I'm a youth who's experiencing lots of trauma, my ability to understand what has happened and when is not going to be available. Your Broca's area, which is dominant on the left side, isn't there. That's your language center. And so if that part is not active when a trauma is happening, all you have is a flurry and a whirlwind of emotion and no language for it, no ability to talk about chronologically what happened. So the disconnection between those two hemispheres when you're going through trauma makes it really, really hard for youth to be able to tell your story. So that means you might be getting to know a youth and it sounds as though they're pulling your leg because you're in your head thinking there's no way that you were like in the military and then you moved from Montana, but you're only 19, but then this happened. They're probably doing the best that they can because it's kind of embarrassing to go, I don't know what happened for the last 3 years. Somebody's asking me that I don't know very well, and I want to share who I am and where I've come from, and I don't know. So I'm just going to kind of fill in the blanks a little bit. So when we can provide an environment where there is predictability and there's structure, it allows the youth to begin to slow down enough and calm enough to where they can actually begin to piece together their story. There is nothing more honoring than when we can understand what our narrative has been up to this point. And truly, you can't make a lot of growth and progress until you have metabolized your own narrative. And so, the way that we do that, providing a healthy structure, healthy boundaries, lots of warmth, lots of empathy. And that's also finally when we can begin to learn alternative coping skills that are going to serve us better, rather than some of the survival skills a lot of our youth have learned. So, any questions? Okay. Number 5 is practicing power with strategies. So one of the hallmarks of trauma is loss of control, loss of power. And when somebody is wielding power over you with no regard to your feelings or your thoughts, the toxic shame of the original trauma can kind of come flooding back. So as adults, as volunteers, we really want to use the power that we have really well. And so power with strategies within a relationship with youth looks like giving them back a bit of autonomy, going, okay, what do you think might work? What are your thoughts? What do you see as the problem? What's your plan here? Rather than just having because I'm in a position of authority, here's what's going to happen. It's giving them the opportunity to problem solve themselves, which is going to only help them become adults that are going to be able to function in society even better. And then lastly, build social, emotional, and resiliency skills. Trauma robs us of the time spent where we actually develop social, emotional skills. Simple example is most of us know that the way that you talk to your boss is very different than you talk to your best friend. A lot of the times, or at least some of the time, it's common that a youth doesn't have a job, not because they aren't employable, but because they don't know how to talk to a future employer. They don't know that you shouldn't text or email with very poor grammar or in a way that is oversharing personal information. And so just things like that. Most of the youth, just as a blanket, most of the youth are doing the best they've been shown how to do. They're working with what they've got. They're working with what they've observed. And so our job as volunteers, as staff, is to kind of fill in the gaps where things are missing. And those things are sometimes barriers to them making a good connection with an employer, communicating professionally with a landlord where the landlord might pick them over another possible tenant. And so social emotional skills aren't an option for you if you're just in a state of survival, right? Like that fight, flight, or freeze, that response is a survival response. So if I'm being chased by a grizzly bear, I'm not really going to care about how I'm communicating to other people or about making that dentist appointment or about being really professional. I'm going to be so consumed with I'm being chased by a grizzly bear. You might see a youth sitting in the center, just scrolling through their phone, seeming super relaxed. That doesn't mean they're not in a state of survival where we might be confused as to, okay, why are they communicating in a way that is so disrespectful or so relaxed? It's going to be because they are working with what they've got, and what they've got is not a lot of practice with good skills. All right, go ahead.
Moving on to a focus of understanding diversity, culture, and privilege. As a potential volunteer coming in, you're going to come into relationship with youth that have very differing stories and come from a different environment. I just want to touch briefly on these concepts that may help in building understanding and may help grow your relationship with the youth. Let's start with some definition. Diversity. Diversity is the practice of learning from and involving people from a range of different social, ethnic, and economic backgrounds. Culture. Culture is the customs, arts, social situations, achievements of a particular nation, people, and other social group. Privilege. Privilege is a special right, advantage that is granted or available only to a particular group. Our youth that have experienced houselessness or homelessness come from a different culture or than dominant society. They also experience different privileges. Areas of privilege we may hold that our youth do not likely have or hold is a consistent and safe place to sleep, access to clean water and food at any time, access to daily showers or restrooms, access to clean clothes or options that they can choose from in fashion. They may not they may not have the opportunity to graduate high school on time or go to college or experience higher education. Civic status, not living in fear of deportation. Strong or supportive community. And resources to pay for medical, dental, and other health practices, or reliable transportation. And how we interact our culture or privilege with their culture. If you are able to walk in their shoes a little bit, experience and listen well, it may further your relationship. Trying to see life by our lens may cause a division or lack of growth in the relationship. So these areas of understanding and building understanding of diversity, culture, and privilege is one of the things we are calling a potential volunteer or staff member in to experience that growth with us.
Any questions? We're now going to wrap up the time talking about human trafficking and sexual exploitation. So I'm going to go over a couple definitions and then talk about some myths that are pretty common held beliefs around trafficking. So the definition of sex trafficking is the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, obtaining, patronizing, or soliciting of a person for the purpose of a commercial sex act in which that act is induced by fraud, force, coercion, or in which the person induced to perform the act has not attained 18 years of age. So that's the definition we're working with there. Labor trafficking definition is the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of a person for labor or services through the use of force, fraud, or coercion for the purposes of subjection to involuntary servitude, peonage, debt, bondage, or slavery. So it's a mouthful, but that's the definition we have. So, common misconceptions about trafficking and runaway and homeless youth. Myth number 1, human trafficking only happens to youth in metropolitan areas. So, false. Reality is human trafficking happens in rural, suburban areas. Labor trafficking and sex trafficking happen in every state, in sparsely populated locations, rural locations, small towns, suburban communities, and major metropolitan areas. I think a lot of times we maybe think of sex trafficking as like, oh, that happens in Las Vegas or in big cities, Chicago or California somewhere, but it really happens just about anywhere. Myth number 2, youth must be transported across state lines or international borders to be victims of trafficking. Reality is that trafficking does not require movement across state lines or international borders. Runaway and homeless youth can be trafficked in their very own communities. And even though transportation is sometimes used as a control mechanism, it's not necessary. It's just not a necessary component. I think sometimes we picture Taken, that movie Taken, where we go, oh, it's got to be like in a foreign country, and then you're taken on a cruise ship or something. It really can happen in your own neighborhood. So it's important that we become accustomed to what we're looking for, that we're not looking for the typical picture of trafficking where someone's taken to Guam and made to be there in a brothel. Trafficking looks very discreet sometimes. So, myth number 3, human trafficking requires the trafficker to use physical force, such as beatings, chains, or handcuffs to control the young person, when the reality is trafficking doesn't really require any physical restraint. Doesn't require bodily harm, doesn't require physical force. Traffickers also use psychological means like threats, fraud, abuse, anything like that to exert control over their victims. Traffickers control their victims by removing all opportunities for them to make their own choices. Myth number 4, trafficked youth are always female. Reality is trafficking victims are male and female, gay, straight, bisexual, transgender, questioning. In 2016, a study commissioned by the U.S. Department of Justice found that males make up about 36% of children that are caught up in the U.S. sex industry. 60% of them are female, and then less than 5% are transgender males and females. Myth number 5, and this is a big one. Youth will tell you if they are being trafficked or if they've been trafficked. The reality is victims of human trafficking, they often don't seek help or even self-identify as a crime, as victims of a crime. Sometimes youth don't even realize that they are victims of human trafficking. They don't even know what's actually happening. And this is largely because when the trafficker is a relative or somebody that the youth knows well, it becomes very difficult for the youth to understand what's happening, and even more difficult to ask for help. Youth may often feel powerless, afraid, threatened, and in some cases feel like they're not even going to be believed. There's many reasons that youth don't self-identify or seek help. And this is especially true for when trafficking happens. Trafficking happens within a romantic relationship. So there's an unfortunate phrase, hook up for housing, where maybe it's a boyfriend and a girlfriend, and the boyfriend's, telling the girlfriend, well, like, so-and-so is going to let us crash, like, at their place for 2 weeks so we can stay out of the rain. Just go hang out with him for a bit. Like, he says he just wants to hang out with you, or just go do this thing. Like, it's not a big deal. Just do that, and then we have a place to stay. So trafficking doesn't look like, it just doesn't look like the movies. It looks very subtle and very discreet. And so a youth, if I'm that girl, I might be confused on what's happening. I might be confused on, oh, well, I'm choosing to do this, and I guess, this would get us out of the rain. So, like, okay, I should do this. And my boyfriend loves me. Like, he wants to protect me, and he's the only person I have. So it makes it just really confusing as what's happening. So knowing that as a volunteer, as a staff member, you just want to know that they're probably not going to tell you, I'm being trafficked. They might be sharing, if they get to a close relationship with you where they start to share a dynamic at play, it's really good for you to be listening as to what's going on. Myth number 6 is that sex trafficking only happens to adults. Reality is that research shows that even though human trafficking spans all demographics, youth are particularly susceptible to traffickers or trafficking situations. Runaway and homeless youth lack a strong supportive network and run away to unfamiliar environments, making them particularly at risk for trafficking. Vulnerable youth or runaway homeless youth have experienced a lot of traumas, and those traumas make them a lot more vulnerable to traffickers. I get nervous anytime I'm driving in the rain and I see a young girl with a backpack walking, because you never know if that's a runaway youth who got a big fight with mom and dad and they're just upset and they're going to walk to their best friend's house, but it's really far away. And somebody pulls up and goes, "Hey, do you need a ride?" And maybe that youth says, "Well, yeah." And they say, "Hey, it's raining. Like, where do you need to go?" "I'm on my way." And okay, they hop in the car. I was going to stop on my way to McDonald's before continuing. "Do you want anything? Like, are you hungry?" I mean, they will seem very, very, very caring, but it's a very strategic act. So all that to say that that's what also makes it more confusing for youth, is that suddenly this person is taking care of them after their parents have kicked them out and they're mean, and this person is driving them places and giving them food and maybe providing resources, and then they maybe develop a romantic relationship, and then there's a sense of, well, I don't have anybody else, and this person's been taking care of me and they love me, and it just becomes, it's usually not a quick switch. It's a very strategic way that it happens. So just be listening for dynamics that feel off, but be very mindful on not confronting the youth about them. That can A, scare them off, and B, make them feel like you're against the person that they're so loyal to. We would just encourage you, if you hear something that sounds fishy, please communicate that to a staff member. Let them be in charge of navigating that territory. You just be a good listener and reporter. The next myth is that the typical trafficker who preys on youth is an easy to spot bad guy. So just like I said, there's no typical trafficker. Young people can be trafficked by their parents, by family members, by relatives, family friends, boyfriends, girlfriends, intimate partners, employers, labor brokers, smugglers, friends. Traffickers come from all walks of life. They can be men or women. They can be old or young. They can be any race or ethnicity, any sexual orientation, any economic or social bracket. They can be part of an organized enterprise like a street gang, or they can just work alone. So there really is no particular profile of a person that you're looking for. Myth number 8, and it's the last one, is that young adults who are experiencing homelessness want to be involved in the sex trade and therefore are not trafficked. Reality is many runaway and homeless youth, specifically between the ages of 18 to 22, those that are involved in the sex trade or survival acts, they're usually forced by their circumstances due to their age, their inability to secure housing, lack of employment, mental health, a whole host of things. And so these young people feel like they don't have any other option but to trade sex for something of value. Any questions on that? Okay. That concludes our training. So thank you for either watching or being here. The work of volunteering with these youth that we serve is a slow and steady process. So I always like to close with a very clear statement that you may not see rapid change in the amount of time that you're volunteering. You really want to think of this as you are pulling up your bootstraps for a long-term work. There's so many beautiful stories I've had from volunteers where they describe, even something as simple as coming to the drop-in center every week and no kids approach them and they think, well, I'm not making a difference. But heaven forbid that volunteer takes vacation that week And then those kids flock to the staff member and demand to know where that volunteer is because they're always there and they're always there and they're there. So it just goes to show that your biggest asset as a volunteer is your time, like your consistency and your availability and your ability to listen. You don't have to have great advice. You don't have to counsel. You just need to be able to listen. You need to show up and just be there. And again, even if it doesn't result in having some big transformative conversation, or you watch a youth go from being homeless to housed and successful and back in school and reconciled with family, there's little tiny shifts that happen that really change the trajectory for somebody. So if you've ever gone sailing, or and maybe I'm going to get this wrong, but my understanding is that ships, when they are in the ocean, they adjust their direction by nautical degrees, and so maybe it's 30 nautical degrees east or 45 nautical degrees west, right? If that ship, think of like a big cargo ship, were to only adjust by 2 nautical degrees east, there'd be very little, if any, shift in the direction of that ship. However, 20 miles later, that ship is going to be in a very, very different location. And so that's what we have to think about when we're working with people who have different trauma, or they are runaways, or they are struggling with housing and things like that, is that we are, as volunteers and staff, we're making 1 to 2 degree shifts. We're not making big 45-degree shifts. If that's what you look for and that's what you're aiming for, you'll get burned out pretty quick and feel very discouraged. But just know that even if you don't see significant transformation, the mere act of your consistent presence, that does something for a kid. That makes them question or wonder, wow, that person shows up all the time. And truly, volunteers have a whole different layer of influence, I think, than staff members, because the youth know, well, staff members, it's your job. You're being paid to care for me, right? A volunteer that's showing up consistently, that speaks on a very different level than what I, as a staff member, could ever accomplish, because you're showing up and you're not being paid. So that must mean you maybe actually do kind of care. So I just want to emphasize that volunteers, like, you have such a beautiful influence that's very unique. And again, it doesn't come down to advice giving or making some big change. It comes down to, can you be available? Can you be consistent? And can you just listen really well? And sure, if they ask for your advice, go for it. But most of the time, they just want to be seen. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you for watching. Again, the process is this orientation, background check. To most of you at this point, if you're watching this or if you've been here, you've done an application. And once all of that is good to go, I will communicate with you and the geographic manager of the location that you're interested in, and they'll connect with you and say, okay, what role do you want to volunteer in? What's your time availability, and what do we need here? There might be too many mentors, but not enough drop-in center people. There might be a huge need for street outreach, but maybe not too much for the shelter. So there'll be a conversation between you and whatever geographic manager you're connected to about where to go from there. So, any questions? Okay, thanks.